Okay. Hi, everybody. My name is Katie Sparks. I'm the STEM and Computer Science coach for MCCSC, and I am joined today by Kara Cheslock, who is a science teacher at Bachelor, and Seth Baysinger, who is a social studies teacher at Tri-North. And really, I'm going to turn it over to them here pretty quickly, but I just want to give a quick introduction. Thank you for being here, or if you're watching this later, thanks for tuning in. The point of our session today really is to give you guys a chance to collaborate with other middle school teachers across the district. They may teach the same subject area, or they may not, but you can still get some unique ideas for how to set up your Canvas course or some different tools that you could use in a remote learning situation. As you know, we are planning to start school in person first week of August, but we could be switching to remote instruction at any point during the year, depending on how things go with the pandemic. So we want to make sure that we have prepared our students for that shift the best that we can. So anything that you do on Canvas while we're in session to help your students better navigate your course, being consistent with where you put certain things, how you link certain things, so that if we have to shift to an online environment, they know where to find things and they have that comfort. So I'm going to turn it over now to Kara, and she's going to kick us off. If you have any questions throughout, you can put those in the chat, or you can just unmute yourself and ask those questions. And we're happy to answer and kind of, keep this as conversational as possible. But Kara and Seth have some really great stuff to share with you guys today.
Awesome. Thanks, Katie.
Yep.
So just kind of a little bit about how today's going to go. I'm going to share some stuff that I did for my Canvas and what things worked well for me. And then Seth's going to share his, both different content areas. So I think we have some different ideas and some different ways that you have some choice in how you want to set up. And the one thing Seth and I had discussed, by no means are we know everything about this. It's really, we learned as we were going, and we found things that worked well for our students and things that did not work well and things that we needed to change. So just kind of those things before I share my screen here. I did put on this slide, if you want it, there's both of our presentations, but Katie is also going to link those to the PD slides that were where you clicked in to get today. And so those are both Seth and mine, and I can also show that later and put that in the chat box. But so just a couple of things here. I teach science at Bachelor. I teach both grades, and so interesting taking science online, considering our curriculum for middle school is completely hands-on. So just some things that I learned that were my big takeaways from remote learning that I really kind of changed a little bit from what I usually do, or things I had to learn. Ask your students. That was huge for me. I flat out told them I've never done this before. And I asked them, am I giving you too much? Am I giving you too little? What do I need to do? And they were very honest. And they gave me a lot of great feedback that allowed me to adapt and change what I needed to do. And I did that at probably about after the first week or so, just to kind of see what I need to do for them. The other thing is make directions, assignments, everything extremely clear, label them with the date, put them in the same location, try to group items so that they don't have to search everywhere. And then something that I kind of used a little bit was videos of myself if I was out of the classroom, but I really leaned on those so the kids could still see me, but also so that they could have video instructions and refer to those without being directly in the classroom. As far as my Canvas setup, so during the school year, my classroom is on Canvas all the time. We're paperless. So it wasn't a huge transition for them to start using Canvas, but how I usually set it up was changed a little bit, because I usually during the school year used the calendar, and I just found that wasn't effective. So I kind of changed a little bit of the ways of how I actually set my Canvas up. So I set my homepage to the syllabus. And on there, I was able to link the important information for students. We included stuff about direct ways to connect with our guidance counselors and social workers and things like that. And then I also put direct links to the modules for each week and for each day within the week. And so mine kind of, when they came up, looked something like this. So everything they can click on. So the Feeling Anxious, Sad, or Safe that had our guidance counselors information on it. And then below every week, I changed it for each day, and that hyperlinked directly to the module that they were using. because I was getting a lot of questions about like where things were, even though we have been using this all year. And I just found myself getting really frustrated. So I was like, I need to simplify this as much as possible. You can't miss it. It's right there. And so that's just a way that I found to really help mine, but keep it organized for the students and for the parents that were trying to help the students that have never really interacted with Canvas that much. So everything was direct linked. I just typed the dates in. You edit the syllabus, and then you can direct link to your modules. And make sure you save it, because that happened a couple of times. But then that way, when they clicked on it, it took them right to my module. So for example, and it looks long on this because I'll show you something I did there, but so they had like their check-in for the day. I gave written instructions as well as like video instructions. So not only what they were doing, but like how to find everything as well, because I just kept getting more questions about where is the assignment or how to do this than I did like how to actually do the assignment. But those are two things that I have never really included, but I found to be very helpful to the kids and less like cause my sanity to not go crazy. So everything was always linked under there with the date. And that way it didn't get too overwhelming, because when I started, I put everything under there for the week, but then I just found that that was way too much stuff in there. So then I split it down to go day by day. And that seemed to cut down on a lot of the problems too, and things to go through. But I can't stress enough using the date and keeping everything the same. So when they go back and try to find it, that was super helpful for the kids. Maybe. So something that was really important to me and something that I focus a lot in my classroom is establishing community and connection with my kids. And so I try to keep the things that we did to start the class period and things that we did the same, just to kind of help them still have that kind of connection as everything was kind of going on. So something that I do is every day there's like a daily question, and it changes what it is. And so I always put that in a discussions is what I chose to use for that. And that was directly linked for each class period in their modules. And so I always put a question, they put it in the discussions. And the thing I liked about that is that I allowed them to kind of comment back and forth and connect. In some classes, like my ALPS class, like love talking to each other. So they like comment back and forth and have full on conversations with each other, which is really cool. And I also shared my questions, and like my paraprofessionals shared their answers as well. So we were able to still kind of maintain that connection. And then the other thing that we did on the daily and that I used a lot was our daily check-in. And so basically SEL is something that's super important to me. And so this was something that we did every day during the school year, but then it was really important during remote learning because it allowed me to get information and that I could get to my guidance counselors just for simple. So I just made it on Google Forms, and there's a different one for each class period that just made it easier for me to be able to sort and track through. And basically just how are you doing today? Like, what are you struggling with? Whatever. And then just that space for, is there anything good or bad that you'd like to share for me today? A lot of them would share like, I'm really overwhelmed. My Canvas isn't working, or I can't submit things, or I'm just having like a rough go of it. And I would reach out to the student, but then I'd also send an email to their respective guidance counselors just to say, hey, I did my check-in. This is what I got from them today. But that was just a way for them, like I said, and that's something that we did throughout the school year. So it wasn't anything new, but I felt like that was really helpful to me. Like a lot of them would be like, today's assignment was really hard. Okay, something for me to go back in and check in and see what I did. So it was just able to have that connection and that communication with them, which was essential during remote learning. Some different things that I did with my academics. So I use Canvas messages. I found when I used announcements, it didn't like pop up, and I didn't really use announcements through the year. So the kids like really didn't click on them. So I started using Canvas messages because it pops up like 1, 2, 3 on their dashboard when they have it. And I basically would send out plans for the week. And then, for example, a big one that I gave them was like a Rube Goldberg type of thing for them to work on. And I linked a lot of information in that with different links and stuff like that. So I use messages to kind of communicate to start the week. I use messages if I hadn't heard from the kid for the week. I'd always reach out on Friday with like information. So that's just, I liked how it notified them. Otherwise the kids just don't go clicking around because I didn't use announcements so well. Videos. So this was something I started using during the school year last year because I had a STEM fellowship and I was out of the classroom a lot. But this is something that was crucial to what I was doing. So all of our content is lab-based, and we were doing physics at the time. So I used a lot of the videos to videotape myself doing things so that they could see the labs. I felt like it was important to see me and not necessarily stuff that was from our curriculum or YouTube videos. I gave them video directions for everything. I gave them video examples. So the Rube Goldberg, I put like 4 examples that I worked on so that they could kind of see that. But I just like that because it was a connection for them and a chance for them to still see me and kind of create that community with them still. More student choice. So typically in the classroom, I'd say, like, I need you to type this in or whatever. I felt if the kids were going to do it, however they were going to do it, worked for me. So I gave them the ability to turn it in text or submit a file, so taking a picture or their PDF. Some of them like to submit the videos because they just like talking better. And so I felt that was a way that just however they were going to do it, I gave them a little bit more choice in how they turn things in. As well as, like, this is particular science, but typically for like anything STEM wise that we do, I would give them like a specific list or things that they could choose from. And I really had to open that up because just equity wise, right, not everybody has everything at their house. So while doing that, I was like, I'm just going to have to open this wide up. But it also led to some of the more creative and kind of awesome projects that I have seen. So I think that was something that I learned from, like, allowing them to have a lot more choice can lead to some great things that they're creating. And so technology. So like I said, we use our iPads every day in my classroom. So some things I kind of relied on, we use Notability all the time. So rather than have the old school notebooks that you were gluing stuff in, we use Notability for that. Any PDFs I give them, I love that they can highlight, insert graphics, draw, import different things. It's awesome and it's amazing. And that's something that they just continue to use. So that wasn't new or anything, but that's something that I've used since I started teaching. And it's transformative, especially for your special education students. They can talk to text in there. They can do a lot of stuff that allows them to kind of keep working there. Quizzes is something I used. It's just kind of self-paced review is what I used it for. I love it because it gives the students immediate feedback, but also for me, like, I can get an Excel spreadsheet and it'll break down, like, they missed question 5. Well, clearly I need to kind of do a better job of teaching whatever that was. And I allowed the kids to kind of do those things multiple times if they wanted to, in order to kind of better grasp what we were talking about. Good Chase is just a different way to interact. It's an online scavenger hunt, actually, but you can do, the students can type, picture, video, whatever. You can have them solve problems. So if you were doing math and you wanted to see it, like, you could make them send a video of them solving a problem. And it just, like, earns points. When we were non-COVID, like, I would have the kids and they'd be able to go around the school and go to different questions, and it's kind of that movement factor. But you can do a lot with it. And so I use that a lot for content, but also, like, our last week of school at Bachelor, we did some fun stuff. So that was another way to engage the kids. Like, they, showed us their Bachelor spirit wear and stuff like that as a fun way to kind of engage with them. And then Flipgrid, this is probably the newest technology I was used to, was able for students to kind of respond to prompts with videos. And so I'm not expert on this, but it was definitely cool to see. I went in there and have been kind of looking around, and there's a lot of lessons that are already on there. So, like, one I found was this, like, robotic hand that the kids could have to create, but everything was in there. So it had, like, their guide, their instructions, a custom workbook for them. And so, like, don't reinvent the wheel. On there, like, I was surprised at how much is already built into there with some quality content of things that they are using. So yeah, that's kind of just what I did. You can always email me any questions that you have, but definitely not the expert, just kind of figured out some things that did work and some things that didn't work. So Seth will share with you now.
Yeah, so let me, all right. So there's a little bit of information. That's my email. Chad and Andre, I know you guys already know how to get get your hands on that. But essentially what I thought through were the best practices. So what were some best practices that we could do as online educators? And then I just went through and kind of showed how I did those things. And so this is kind of the outline for the PowerPoint itself. And then I gave you some personal examples. So for me, the providing the clear expectations was as simple as having clear things that students knew that they had to do. And that started at its most basic level with how to navigate Canvas. So we use Canvas all year. And so students were used to using my Canvas page, but honestly, before we went kind of on the distance learning track, my Canvas page was a little bit of a mess. So I had to learn how to reorganize it, and I'll show you how I did that. Students should know each day what they're looking for. They should know that you are on Canvas, that you're an active presence there. So not just setting up a bunch of modules and limiting interaction, but students should be able to know that you're kind of there with them working on things. Sorry, I don't know what I'm doing right now. Then I also used standard labels so they understood what they were looking for. Assignments were clearly labeled, bell work, resources, whatever, so they knew what the tab was that they were going to click on. And each day, all of them shared common names. And this is something we kind of came up with at Tri-North. And so this is nothing new if you were working there. But for instance, day 18, I included the date, and the kid knows that that's the bell work. Day 18, assignment, date, day 18, video, necessary to complete the assignment. So the kids know what the links were for. And then I would use announcements for daily instructions and kind of a daily check-in with students and parents. I would provide kind of the rationale for assignments. I would go through the standards, and I would just put extra resources for the day in there. And I'll kind of show why here in a second. So you could tell, like, this is the contingency plan we came up with prior to going on our COVID break. And so that's not as standardized as it was later, but we included readings, and on the front side of things, we were just trying to do a bunch of review assignments. You could tell later on, once I found out that we were going to be doing this for a while, I started adding in annotations. And so what I wanted to do is I wanted to show you these pages so you could see kind of my growth. So this was kind of messy early on. This is 3 pages of the same reading. It was kind of confusing. Students had a hard time with it. I annotated it, provided the resources, and I understood students were having a hard time. So later on, what I decided to resort to is I would, figured out how to scan 3 pages onto one document, but then also I would provide a video of me annotating the document and reading the document out loud. That way students could have that and hear that. And so as we continued online instruction, my descriptions got more detailed. And this was a result of the feedback from students and parents that I received. I tried to keep communication as open as possible. I used the announcement feature to do that. I would I would put extra learning opportunities in there. I would tell parents what was going on, students what was going on. Parents would message me after seeing these announcements. I would give overviews of different units and lessons that we were covering. And so I tried to open up communication as much as I could and just be as detailed as I could with directions. I put directions in everything that I did. So for instance, if I was doing an assignment, the instructions for that assignment would be in the announcement that I gave that day. The instructions for the assignment would oftentimes be in the label of the assignment. The instructions for the assignment would then also be in the description of the assignment that the student clicked on. And then once you clicked on this video and listened to the video, I was also giving them instructions in the video that would relate to the assignment as well. And the big thing there is I was trying to minimize, students who might have missed instruction. That I gave them as many opportunities as I could to make sure they knew what they were doing and what was expected. I also used bell work to gauge how students were doing. And so I love the Google form idea that I saw prior, but I didn't know how to do that stuff as well. So I used Canvas tools to do this stuff. And that was actually the biggest thing for me, was hearing feedback from the students and from their parents. And so I think it was big for a couple ways. Number one, I think it engaged students. So it showed students that I was really looking at their materials. It also was a place where I could respond to them and give them feedback and encourage them. And then I could respond to specific observations and questions raised by students. And I really do think that this made them feel heard. And then the second part of this is all of this feedback I was getting was really helpful for reflection, asking students and parents how things were going. That was a lot of times my bell work question for the day. I would use that feedback to adjust my pedagogy. And what this really did is it helped to provide trust and buy-in from parents and students as they really got to see their feedback helping to shape my course. So here's a couple examples. This kind of shows the difficulty of the feedback I got. So if you look at this assignment right here, this is the same bell work question. So I asked 3 questions in the bell work. I said, how are you feeling about online learning thus far? What can be done to make the experience better for you? And then how are the length of assignments and what adjustments need to be made, if any? And so this person answered this question up here. It said, I would rather go to school. When I'm at home and doing schoolwork, I get distracted and then not do it. But at school, I have to do it and I get it done. Everything is really good. There's nothing you need to change to make it better. The work you give us is easy and somewhat fun. So thank you. The assignments are not long. Right. And so that's encouraging. That's nice to hear. But then I got this response, right? So you look through the same things here. They didn't like how my lessons were created at the beginning. And this part right here was really kind of a gut check. I feel like the work is made to take more time than class would. This make each class limited on 30 minutes worth of max work needed for a 7th grader. It doesn't have to be exact, but it shouldn't take an hour to complete one class. And so you're seeing there's a variety of feedback that you're getting. And so it was really helpful for me to see kind of both of those things, because if I were just leaving it open for students to message me if they had questions, I don't know if I would have received this feedback. But if I made it an assignment, then I'm getting this feedback from the student, and then I can tell the student that I hear them and that I'm trying to work to make it better for them. So what ended up happening was, as I was seeing that students were struggling and other students were really enjoying it, it caused me to differentiate. So received requests for both lengthened and shortened assignments. I used the announcements tool to add extra resources. So I was trying not to overwhelm my feed on my modules. So when you logged on to my page as a student, what you saw was my modules first thing. And so I had students asking me for more stuff. They said my stuff that I was giving them was too short. And so I would add things in the announcements tool. So I would give them extra videos or some extra resources in the announcement tool for that day that was relevant to that day's activity. That way I didn't muddy up my module. And then it allowed for parents to see these extra tools. I had a lot of messages from parents who were seeing some of the materials I was giving, and then they would jump on and say, hey, this really made me think about such and such. And then I get to research that and then provide resources to what this parent was talking about the next day. And so I think it really did help with some buy-in. And then there was constant communication with our SPED department to make sure that I was providing the appropriate supports. And so I provided annotated copies of whatever readings we were doing to our students. I also provided those to our SPED team ahead of time. And then I also did videos of me doing read alouds of the article, and then I would go along and annotate it with it. And I would show you what I thought was the best tool for this toward the end of the presentation. And then we had weekly meetings with someone from the SPED department to receive feedback and to hear kind of what we could do better or what was working well, what there were issues with. As far as connecting with the students and building the classroom culture online, I recorded my own videos rather than finding YouTube videos to support learning. I did this for a couple ways. When I provided the YouTube videos, I got tons of messages saying they didn't work. And so that's an error on my end probably. But for me, it was just easier to record my own videos and know that I was uploading them and that they were working versus trying to fit things in that may not work. I also met with students on Google Meets. I gave them learning games like Quizlet Live and Kahoot, and we did that over Google Meets. It gave students and parents a heads up on when the meeting times were going to happen. I'd normally do this if I was going to meet with them on a Thursday. I'd put this on my announcements for the Monday and then subsequently every day of the week. And these were always optional for students and parents. So if parents didn't feel comfortable or students didn't feel comfortable doing the Google Meet, it was never required. for them to do that. I would normally have a bell work for them to do that day, so that they could still show me that they were working on stuff, but didn't have to do that over the Google Meet. And then, of course, the message tool on Canvas I used all the time. But giving students opportunities for feedback and questions as part of their assignments gave them a platform to be heard that they might not have felt if they had been just having to message me in their own initiative. So students felt pretty comfortable providing constructive and critical feedback. And so in a lot of ways, it was really good for me to ask those things because I got some real answers. And then, especially in middle school, when we weren't really grading as far as assessing them, I was still giving authentic feedback. And any little bit of work I was receiving from students, I tried to champion as hard as I could, to know that what they were doing really was meaningful, and just trying to keep building kind of student perseverance through this time. So I provided here some of the tools that were most helpful for me. For me, the biggest thing was EduCreations, and I had to pay for a premium account to this. It was like $12 a month. But I tried using other platforms, and this one for me was like just the best for a couple reasons. Number one, you can link it to your Google Drive, and so any kind of Google slide presentation that you have can be uploaded, and you can annotate and kind of go along with it there. So it allowed for me to kind of synthesize a lot of my information and think through what's critical for a student to know. And then I'd upload it, and it was super user friendly. It allows me to synthesize content, and hopefully will be good for future use. So even if we are doing remote learning or if students are missing, I'm planning on throughout the year doing a 15-minute, 10-minute summary on EduCreations of a presentation that we did. And that'll be the thing I upload for students who missed class to be able to kind of look back and see what we did, or even students that were in my class but maybe had a hard time following. It'll be there for them as well. I did Google Meets. Students enjoyed this. Whenever I would do it, I would have over like 60 students participate. I would do it, especially at the end of a unit, since I wasn't doing summative assessment. I would kind of go through and I would answer any kind of questions from the unit. And then also we'd play some learning games to kind of show whether or not the kids were actually learning stuff. And the kids really enjoyed it. I would normally do a morning time and an afternoon time. And I always had kids ask if they could come back in the afternoon. So it really did provide good opportunities for the kids. And then ReadWorks and Newsela, those were two things that I used a lot. So hopefully those things are helpful. They were to me. I don't know if you guys have any questions with that.
Thank you, Kara and Seth. So at this time, we'll open it up to any questions that you have for either Kara or Seth, or if anybody else has anything that worked really well for you that you feel like we could all learn from. We would love to hear those suggestions too. If you had a specific navigation strategy or a specific tech tool that you used that really engaged your students well. Like I said at the beginning, this is just a collaborative time for us to all kind of talk and ask each other questions and put it all out there before we head back here in a few weeks. So I'll open it up. If you have questions, you can just unmute yourself and ask, or you can put them in the chat. Okay. Well,
I have a quick question.
Yeah.
And it may have been said at the beginning, but I kind of missed the first couple minutes. Will these presentations be shared?
Yes. So we will share the video recording of today's session as well as both Kara and Seth's slides. I'll link them on the Google Doc, the PD document that was sent out by Dr. Winston. So
Great.
They'll be linked there. And then I'll probably put them in a couple other places too, like on our Canvas PD page. And yeah, you'll definitely have them. And if you don't see them, feel free to shoot me an email and I can get them to you. Any other questions? I also led the K-2 session yesterday, and one thing that came up in their session was this conversation about using pages in Canvas versus using modules. And just to kind of weigh in on that, I know that there's benefits to using both for sure. And maybe with the older kids, like middle school, modules work really well and you feel like that's working great. I know they were saying for the elementary, sometimes it's just not real engaging for a kid for like a kindergartner, first or second grader to look at a list in a module like that. So they prefer pages. But we've been working with pages a lot, and it can do a lot of what modules can do. So within your Canvas course, you can create multiple pages. You can link them together using buttons. So you tell the kids to click on this certain button to get to today's work, or, you know, whatever it is. Maybe it's an assignment, maybe it's a discussion. But I know that a lot of people are starting to look at pages either in addition to modules or instead of modules as a different organization method. So I just wanted to throw it out there that setting your class up with multiple pages is another way to navigate through Canvas.
Can I add something for the module thing?
Yeah.
So one of the things that early on I learned is I just kind of had things in random order, like throughout the school year, when I wasn't doing the e-learning or the distance learning. What was happening is I would just add resources as kind of they were coming up that day. One of the things that I heard was really helpful from how I set it up during the distance learning was not only was it set up using the day-by-day labels and all that stuff, like creating that uniformity, but also put it in order of like assignment. So it started with the bell work every given day, and then it was whatever was happening next and like the order of operations in your classroom. That way, I think it helped kids navigate all of that page. So.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a good tip. And the other thing too to keep in mind is, you know, in middle school, your students are going to lots of different teachers and they're seeing Canvas pages set up in a lot of different ways. So the more consistent that you can be from one teacher to the next, the easier that'll make it on your students too. So if all teachers are organizing their modules chronologically, that's something that can be really helpful to students.
Yeah, to kind of maybe build on that as like a best practice idea. I know that our middle school has started to have like there's a committee for Canvas that is kind of trying to come up with a cross-building, I guess, setup that we can all follow. So in theory, every class will have everything in the same place across classes. So I don't know if other schools are thinking about that, but that's something that we're trying, and we'll see how it works.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I think that is something that at the district level, they're asking schools to be consistent across a building, not necessarily consistent from one building to the next, but at least across the building so that kids are seeing the same thing from all of their teachers. So those are going to be building level decisions to hopefully help kids and parents navigate these courses. Anything else?
During the when we were doing distance learning, one of the things I did, I had a page a week. So I changed the page every week. And I've always done mine with a table. And so I had the date, and across that line was the bell work, the assignments. And then when they clicked on the assignment, it took them to the assignment during distance learning that had everything they needed, all the links for that day. But it started on a page, and then it actually, they never had to deal with the modules. It was like on the back end.
Okay. Question, did you archive those in any way? Like if a student missed something from 3 weeks ago, did they have any way to go? Okay.
And each week at the bottom, it had a link. Here's the previous page. So they could click at the bottom to get to whatever they needed. And it was in modules too. And I tried to show them, at one point I showed them in class different ways that they could get to things. Because they could even go to assignments and search if they needed to. Because of the way, I'm like, if you see this missing in Skyward, go to Canvas assignments and type that name because it was the same name. And it should have popped up in the search. That was the quickest way, but I tried to show them all the different ways that I could think of for them to find the assignment that they were missing.
Yeah,
and there's a lot.
Yeah, that's a great suggestion. Any other thoughts or ideas to share out, questions that you want to ask the group? Okay, well, we will wrap up here for today. If you have colleagues or anybody that you think would benefit from today's session, maybe they couldn't log in, make sure you tell them that this link will be on that PD document so they can go back and watch our session as well as access the slides from Kara and Seth. Thank you all so much for being here today in the middle of your summer. And Kara and Seth and I will stick around for just a few minutes. If you have any individual questions, we can answer those, but I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording now, and we'll see everyone soon. Thanks.